chair for this round. Amazing. I have no gender pronoun preferences. I won't be judging by myself, but judging in the order listed on a tab with me is...
Hi, I'm Alex. Good luck to everyone.
Hi, my name is Diego. Prefer pronouns he, him.
Hey,
Hello,
Jason.
oh, sorry. Sorry. Roger, he, they pronounce. Thank you. Good luck, everyone.
Hi, I'm Jason. I use he and pronouns. Good luck to everyone.
Amazing. Amazing. So even though we have a pronoun preferences, we still prefer if you address the panel as a whole. Two things I want to note. One, please do not speak over 7 minutes 15. Everything you say there will not be taken into account, and we're just wasting people's time. And secondly, please give and take POIs. Whilst this is an out round and I can't deduct your speaks, I will flip close comparisons as it comes to that. That being said, let's quickly run through speak introductions to make sure we get that in as well. Starting from opening government, and feel free to disclose gender pronoun preferences as well if you wish to do so.
Hi, my name is Robiah. I'll be the PM, he, him pronouns.
Hi, I'm Aadit. I'm going second. He, him.
Oh, opening opposition.
Yeah, sorry about that. Matt Wakonda, I'm going to be leader of opposition, and Henaku Kwasi is going to be deputy leader of opposition. No preferred gender pronouns. Thank you.
Amazing. CG.
Sorry. Member of government Ania and government whip Alif.
Amazing. Sia.
Hi, my name is Fernando. I'll be the member. Guilherme will be your whip. We both prefer he, him pronouns.
Okay, perfect. That being said, let's waste no more time. Prime Minister, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. Kika.
Hi, just to confirm, I'm clearly visible and audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, I'll take PY from closing opposition. If not, opening is welcome as well. It's gonna start in a bit. Let me just set up my timer. One of the worst parts of the human condition is the part that tells us we're better than our fellow man. From opening government, we're proud to eradicate it forever. Two arguments. Firstly, on why on an individual personal level, people have far more happiness and fulfillment. Secondly, on a more collective level, what society is far more equitable and far less problematic for people on the ground, especially the most vulnerable minorities out there. Before that, some framing. Because opposition would like to strategically claim that this narrative and this particular part of the human condition is extremely moderated and not that powerful. There's three reasons, however. We believe that ambition is one of the most powerful driving factors of human action. The first thing is biological, right? I think ambition is a biological evolution that drives us to do better and better. And the reason it exists is because back in the day when human beings didn't live in cities and we lived in forests, we needed ambition to aggressively survive because ecological pressures on us to not be able to survive was quite great. We think, therefore, it's a biological artifact that still exists today, even though the circumstances that led to its existence doesn't exist anymore. Secondarily, it intersects with other powerful social norms. Things like capitalism directly amplify the idea of ambition, that you should try to be better than other people and always achieve something significant. But I think thirdly, it is normalized to you quite significantly. You learn about ambition at a very young age when your parents talk about how you need to be better than them. You learn it in school when, for example, your grade assigns your roll numbers based on who scored the highest in the final exam and stuff like that. It is something that's indoctrinated within you from a very young age. It becomes a powerful part of a decision-making calculus. So it cannot be moderated by liberalizing forces if opposition chooses to run that comparative. First argument then under this framing is that people on our side are far more happy. I'm going to analyze two things under this argument. The first thing is that all people to some extent have certain things to be happy about. We can have friends that could make us happy, a job, for example, or achievements. The problem is that there's a hedonic treadmill that is directly created by ambition, which tells us that the things that make us happy is insufficient. Gut check this panel. That is why so many of these successful debaters are so depressed. success, because to them, winning one tournament isn't enough if they can't win the next, if they don't break in the next, so on and so forth. The comparative in our side of the house is that even if narratives that perpetuate the hedonic treadmill exist, like capitalism, it doesn't resonate with you as strongly. The cognitive dissonance doesn't make as sense, right? Because the desire within you to want to be better than what you are right now isn't as powerful. So the things that do make you happy, you're able to enjoy them without getting over them and without getting desensitized to them. I think secondarily, it is much easier for you to deal with failure, right? And I want to point out, panel, failure is a fundamentally inevitable part of the human experience for the vast majority of people for three reasons. Firstly, success is incredibly zero-sum. The people who win this debate are winning it at the expense of every other team in this tournament who couldn't win the debate tournament. But I think secondarily, societal inequalities are increasing every single day. So the odds are being stacked against you more and more. The ability for me to become the best at my field is decreasing insofar as people with more privilege than me have more resources and stuff like that. But then thirdly, just sheer dumb luck, right? Maybe in one tournament you're feeling quite well. Maybe the motion set is something you're not used to. That could lead to you failing to some extent, not performing to your capacity and stuff like that. So failure is fundamentally inevitable. So the question is, where are you better able to deal with the failure? The problem on their side of the house is that because your expectations are quite high, you feel like your failure a lot more. It feels like a bigger transgression on your life's trajectory. You feel worse because of it. You feel like your life isn't going to get any better and stuff like that. The comparative on our side of the house is number one. When you don't have ambitions and even don't set the threshold too high, you're better able to rationalize your failures. You can tell yourself these things like, I was just a bad motion set. The judge perhaps didn't see the motion, the debate the way he saw it, etc. But secondarily, when you don't feel as bad about failure, you're more likely to stick to the path, right? You don't give up. So the capacity for you to succeed later is far better off in our side of the house. The impact is twofold. I think firstly, this obviously affects the more like professional parts of your life. You're more likely to get a promotion in your job when you don't give up and you keep trying. You're more likely to win more debate tournaments when you don't give up if you don't break at Worlds once. But I think secondarily, other more soft parts of your life, like the friendships you have, like the relationship you foster, etc., are also better off. We already win on the personal level. Before I move on to the collective argumentation on society overall, I'll take closing if they have anything.
Okay, so you may have lower lows, but you also have higher highs because you strive for greater things. Do the comparison. Why is it better to have a milder, more boring life instead of a life of higher lows?
Because I've given you three reasons as to why failure is the norm in most cases, right? I won't repeat them, but that proves to you, given that failure is more likely than success, it is better that you're able to moderate failure than enjoy the highest of highs in success. It doesn't work that way. It's an asymmetry here that I've proven. On the collective then, I want to talk about two groups of people here. Firstly, I want to talk about rich and powerful people. Secondly, I want to talk about people who are minorities and social justice movements. But the thesis of this argument is that ultimately collective structures in society, like for example, institutions like the government, institutions like corporations, are ultimately built up by individuals and run by individuals in power, right? They're obviously affected by the same ambitions that a normal human being is. Why is it that society collectively then is better off in our side of the house? Firstly, I think the rich and the powerful are far more likely in our side to moderate their oppression and to be far less problematic for a very simple reason. The intuition is that, note panel, that if you are a multimillionaire, you probably have more than enough money to satiate all your immediate needs and even beyond that, right? Most billionaires don't need to earn the next $1 billion. They can literally never work a day in their life and still even be able to afford all the luxury stuff they want to. The reason they continue to do things that perpetuate inequality, like pushing their workers to the bone, is because of ambition, because they feel an intrinsic value in pushing their wealth even further, in getting more and more wealth and more power. The comparative on our side is twofold. Firstly, you're more content with what you have. So the billionaires of today don't strive to become trillionaires by oppressing people. The entrenchment of inequality is stalled in our side of the house. But secondarily, they're more likely to come to a compromise, right? If you're a politician and you, for example, are striving for anti-abortion regulations, you aren't, on their side of the house, you aren't happy by just having like abortion being banned on like a federal level, you also want to push it to the state level, to the constitutional level, etc., because you have an ambition within you. In our side, you're more likely to reach a compromise because you don't want to keep doing something better and better. So the rich and powerful oppress less in our side. But I think social justice movements are also better off for two reasons. Firstly, collectivization is better off because know that different people are ambitious to a different extent. There's certain people within minority communities who are more ambitious, who look down upon other people who don't view their personal ambition as much and blame society because they say, you shouldn't blame society, you can just get a better job and work a bit harder. This fracturing weakens social justice movements and the collectivization for these minority groups. For all these reasons, very happy to propose.
Thank you very much for the very fine speech. Leader of opposition to open the case opposition bench. Here. If no one objects, yes, it is fine.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, awesome. Just give me a second to set my timer and get back to here. All right, I would like to confirm if I'm still audible. Awesome. Right, so I prefer audible POIs. I will start my speech. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First of all, it is incredibly important that we understand the characterization of ambition that was given to us in the info slide. It's incredibly important that we notice that it's about improving yourself, first of all, but secondly, making sure or desiring to be much better than the people around you and the other people in the community. I'll show you why this is incredibly important within the scope of today's debate. Let's start by tackling the very first argument that you get, the best argument you get from opening government. They say that ambition leads to the hedonistic treadmill, and that particular ambition pushes individuals in that particular point. They will never be happy because they can never fully attain happiness. Notice, panel, that the idea of happiness is literally different from the idea of ambition. Humans always seek comfort or happiness. Ambition in and of itself is the desire to achieve something that is relevant. Notice that these are two completely different things. Humans will always seek the hedonistic treadmill. We think that ambition offers a more productive avenue to scratch the hedonistic itch, because the motion says that ambition is the desire to pursue something relevant. Hedonism is simply the desire for happiness, which is innate. It does not have to be relevant for this particular individuals to be happy out of it, i.e. individuals consume things that makes them happy. They do things like consumption of drugs, gambling, etc. to satisfy the hedonistic treadmill. We don't think these are things that most likely happen as a result of simply ambition. Panel, in their world, individuals still have the desire to have hedonistic tendencies and implications. In our world, we give them a productive ability to be able to channel this towards making things much better for themselves, making themselves much better in the society, etc. In their world, these individuals have less productive avenues to do these sort of things in the first place. So all the examples I told you about, drinking, engaging in things like debauchery, engaging in drugs, etc., are always by which individuals fulfill that hedonist desire that they have in their hearts and all those sort of things in the first place. But notice, secondly, that panel within communities, and this is the argumentation on communal reinforcement, the communities are made up of individual elements. These individual elements are citizens or the members of that particular community. The one that ensures that individuals are have that incentive to improve themselves, regardless of the incentive to do that, is the one that ensures that the society as itself as a whole community ends up developing as a whole. It's extremely simple. Once the very units in that particular community are focused on improving themselves, especially because of the competition that exists, you end up strengthening that particular community and making sure the community is stronger. I.e., in a world where everybody has the incentive to be much better than the other person, individuals engage in self-developmental activities, things like learning more than the guy beside me, things like trying to work harder than the guy beside me because I want to be much better than him. Collectively, the end result of that is that you end up with a society where individuals in that particular community end up getting much better as a result. Because of the unit of that particular element getting much better, the whole community ends up getting stronger because more individuals in a particular community get themselves to be much stronger. We move on, panel. We think that in the characterization of ambition that we get in the info slide, notice that it is simply about competition. That is to say, the desire to be better than the guy beside you or be better than your opponent. Right. Panel, notice something. We think it's incredibly important that we mechanize this from two important angles. First of all, on corporations. We think that corporate ambition is the reason why corporations have an incentive to do much better than their competition. Panel, notice that the ambition to be better than the people who are selling next to you, the ambition to be better than the guy who is most likely producing your commodities, like the same commodities as you, is the incentive these particular individuals have to improve upon innovations. They have the incentive to make better products and to differentiate their products in a particular regard. It means then that because of ambition, people within markets have access to better commodities, better terms of sales, better opportunities, and all these things in the first place. You don't have that in a world where individuals are satisfied with the little thing that they have in that particular regard. Within the desire for more relevant things is what has led to these particular corporations innovating and becoming much, much better. But secondly, on political ambitions, notice that the desire to be much better than political opposition, the desire to be much, much better than people who are against you within the political sphere is the reason why government engage in more like improved policies, etc. That is most likely going to make them look better, etc. It means that for the desire to be much better than opposition, people who find themselves within the lower echelons of society literally have an opportunity because governments have an incentive to look much better or to do much, much better than these particular guys in a particular regard. We'll mechanize much more in this respect. But before I'll take a POI from closing.
Okay, a big part of your argument is actually contingent on the idea that motivation can only come from ambition, but we believe that motivation can also be intrinsic. What do you say to that?
If that motivation is about getting better, then it can only come from ambition. No matter how you try to word it, it's all about getting much better, doing much more relevant things, getting much better than you are right now, getting better than the other person. If that is the case, then we are really going to consent to that. Let's move on. Panel, notice and we think very importantly that failure is an incredibly important aspect in today's society. Notice that both sides of the world agree that failure is something that is most likely going to happen. We need to ask ourselves a question. What happens when you fail in both worlds? What happens in our world where you have an incentive to be much better than the guy beside you, where you have an ego to protect, where you have an ambition and a goal of getting much better than you are right now? Individuals have the incentive of overcoming failure and getting encouraged to work much more harder so that they don't face that failure in that particular regard. That is to say that the hedonistic treadmill is relative. Individuals focus more on improving upon, or increasing their proficiency, getting much better than they were previously. In Gav's world, where people don't have that particular ambition, where people don't feel that connection and they say to be better than the people who beat them yesterday, what happens is that people most likely give up. And this is the reason why that is incredibly important. Is because life in and of itself is one that cannot be predicted. But secondly, it is extremely difficult and something that rewards those who try much, much better. The second thing here is that literally development is something that is like experiential. Once individuals fail, at the point where they have an incentive to be much better than they were previously, we think it is that particular incentive that encourages them to do much better, improve upon their abilities and their skills. What does this mean? We encourage individuals to not give up because these guys, that's government would say that individuals fail and they become perpetually down, like heartbroken. They have no incentive to promote themselves in a particular regard. We think that is much more in their world because these individuals don't have that drive that pushes them to continuously put themselves and subject themselves to that particular hardship to get much better than they are right now. Individuals in our world are better able to fulfill hardships and all those things in a particular regard. We think that at the end of the day, we not only improve upon the very unit of society and consequently improve upon the strength of society, you improve upon individuals' ability to overcome failure and opportunity to promote competition in all spheres of the world. Proud to oppose.
Thank you very much for a very fine speech. And I want to call on Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Hi, can I get a few seconds?
You have 1 minute as per manual.
Perfect.
EPM, you have 10 seconds left to start.
Yeah, I'm here. Okay. Right. POIs via chat's fine, and phone on the heater. Can you see me? Okay. All right. Great. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I just want to point out the big difference between like ambition and like human action, right? I think the biggest problem in OO is that they keep thinking, and that PY from CO is like CG is quite right? That human action doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have ambition to like do things that like even like increase your happiness in life or like other people's happiness, right? There are multiple reasons as to why you would still want things that make you feel better or make other people around you feel better. One of them, lived experiences. You obviously have lived experiences that shape the way you think, shape the way that you like conceive, like those shape the way that you like conceptualize reality, and you want to make it better. But secondly, survival. Everyone needs money. Everyone wants promotions because you understand that's intrinsic for your value to live in this world that requires you to have capital. But thirdly, passion. People are just passionate about being a good person, or people are just passionate about work, or people are just passionate about things that they do, which drives human actions and which drives their need to be fulfilled and have fulfillment in whatever they occur in. The difference in their world then is just ambition, and that ambition is inherently and fundamentally selfish. It requires you to do something, or it requires you to do a multitude of things which you would never stop at any cost, because you're so driven by the need to pursue that you would not stop at any cost. And that is the point in which we differentiate. That is the delta in this debate, in which we can prove to you that that drive to not stop at anything is extremely harmful in this world. A lot of responses to OO. Firstly, their entire claim on happiness. They say that people seek happiness regardless. What they do is they provide a more productive outlet. Yes, I agree. But the difference is that the definition of happiness changes on our side. Firstly, we tell you that in society and via Robiah's mechanism, society has like this big characterization of like capitalism and individualism, which drives and propels people to be more selfish and individualistic in nature, in which they're not willing to help their neighbors or love thy neighbor, because they're willing to do whatever it takes for them to get that promotion instead of their friend, or whatever it takes for them to be happy rather than the person next to them. In comparison to that, what we tell you is we have more empathy on our side, because you are okay with compromise, you are okay with failure, in which you're okay with helping another person out because it comes from the goodwill of your own heart, right? Which often means that the terms of happiness and the access to fulfillment and happiness is just much better on our side. And then the whole POI that we get from CO, we can add that into here as well, in which CO claims that the highest of highs that exists when it comes to success is great. But the simple response to that is that happiness is oftentimes much more harder to get than just accepting and moderating failure, simply because of the reasons that Robiah told you, which is why we believe that just via the magnitude and the quantity of impacts that we have, people will fail more, which means if we can moderate failure and make people more content with their position in life, we just lead a happier life and a more fulfilled life, which in and of itself is debate winning. But secondly, they tell us about communities and why communities will inherently be stronger. I just think this is untrue. Firstly, the whole Infoslide mentions that ambition drives you to be better than the person next to you, which obviously causes a lot of fractions between not only you and your loved ones, but even between social justice movements or minority communities who want to uplift themselves and get out of dangerous or tough situations politically, economically, socially, which often means that you're not only shamed in minority communities because they can't claim that ambition exists on everyone on the same level, because ambition is obviously on a spectrum on their side, but in our side, because that spectrum isn't there and no one is that ambitious anymore, means that people are more willing to understand each other's perspectives and understand and find common unity and communal goals in which they'd be able to derive happiness from whatever goal that they've set for themselves, instead of having fractions within a community in which you're wanting and willing to be selfish and willing to shame the other person for not being as ambitious as you are. But secondly, we also tell you that you still advocate for social change, and we give you multiple reasons for this. We tell you because of lived experiences. If you're a person from a minority community or a vulnerable, disenfranchised place, you would obviously want to better your life because that's an intrinsic human value that you have. You would want to make sure that people around you and your community does better, which often drives the human action for you to make that change possible. But oftentimes, because you fail, you because you fail in their world where you're more ambitious, you're more likely to give up because that failure affects you more, right? What we tell you is that drive to make the world a better place because you see people suffering around you doesn't go away on our side because you fail once. You're more likely to stick towards it because you're okay with failure and you're okay with going about it instead of just accepting it and being like, you know what, I'm done with this. That isn't ambitious. That's just an intrinsic need for you to make your life a better place, which obviously does exist everywhere else. Thirdly, they tell us this idea of corporations, which I think is mind-boggling to me. Corporations are the worst actor to bring about in this debate. Firstly, I'll just take them at their best, and I'll say that this is still not exclusive, because if your entire argument is this economic argument about privatization and why there would be competition in the market, companies would still be motivated because of all the reasons I said, like you still want survival, you still want better profit margins for your company because they're intrinsic to you and your goals. But secondly, ambition inherently leads to wanting more selfish things, like an increase of your profit margins, right? You will never settle for less because of the hedonic treadmill we talk about, which often means that it drives you to insanity. You will exploit your workers, give workers horrible working conditions, not pay them enough wages just to be better than the other company that's right next to you, right? Which often means that people are exploited more on their side because one person wants greater things for themselves. And this often leads to an imbalance of power that already exists in this world, in which richer people and more powerful people can exploit other people under the umbrella and the veil of ambition. Before I move forward, I'll take that POI from CEO.
Ambition is like a catalyst and an amplifier. You still work because you need to be to have a job and have money, but you have less incentive to try for being the best and getting a promotion. You're more confirmed with your condition. You need to take the burden that people achieve less on your side of the house.
Okay, we're okay with people achieving less on our side if that means that people are less exploited, if that means only a select group of people are able to succeed because they have the same amount of ambition as someone who is less privileged than they are. Because in your side, that's a constant cycle of hardship for the person who doesn't have that privilege, right? Okay, the last thing on political ambitions. Because of the whole mechanism that we tell you that you're more okay with failure and more okay with compromise, what this does is that firstly, you are able to accept failure more. And secondly, there's less stakes on your point of view, right? Because there's a lower desire for whatever you want to happen. Why is this good on both a micro scale and a macro scale? On a micro scale, this means that there's better conflict resolution. This betters the quality of your relationships, in which you'll be willing to compromise with your partner, your family, in whatever disagreement you've had. You're able to build a better connection with another human being that you care about. But most importantly, getting to their argument on the whole political landscape, I feel like if Ted Cruz is really fucking stringent on gun laws, willing to compromise on gun laws would make the world a better place. So when it comes to conservative, radical, fascist policies, we make the world a better place because you're willing to compromise. In comparison, on their side, you're driven to insanity to pass your policy, which makes everything worse off for endangered communities. Extremely proud to propose.
Thank you very much for that very fine speech. Deputy Leader of Opposition to close off top part. Thank you.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Just a couple of seconds to set my timer up. Okay, so if you have a POI, just kindly unmute and then ask. I would gladly take you when the time is ready. But I'm not watching the chat space, so I wouldn't be able to see it if you put it in the chat space. Okay, with that said, I begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Unless we become robots, human beings are a culmination of desires that even the laziest and most unambitious people get sad. They get jealous when they see models that have certain body figures that they don't. They get disgusted by certain cultures just because the cultures are different from them. Or they hate specific individuals just because of the idea that they do certain things that are just icky to them or that are not in line with their principles as human beings. And this is quite important. We are not supposed to defend a world whereby human beings all of a sudden only have these particular emotions in our world. And it is quite important for you to know where the tipping point of today's debate is. Insofar as people are always going to have pleasure because they are still human beings. Insofar as people are always going to feel sad because they are always human beings. Insofar as I'm going to look at Bill Gates and still get jealous at him because I am still a human being. The question then becomes, What strong desire pushes me to actually want to be all of these things? Three things happen in these instances. We think that first, you can be an unambitious person, look at all of these individuals and wallow in pity. So you are jealous of Bill Gates, you are jealous of all of these other individuals, but there is no mechanism for you to express these particular things, and you are constantly in that state of depression because all of these emotions are consistently in your body, but you do not have a mechanism to express it, or you do not have a strong desire to express all of these particular things. But what we think is that ambition is a very good mechanism that allows for individuals to express all of these existing desires and all of these existing preferences. And this is quite important because what ambition is a productive way of expressing these things. The counterfactual is that these things will still exist regardless. The problem then is that there is no mechanism for individuals to actually express these things because ambition does not exist anymore, and the mechanism that allows them to do these specific things does not exist anymore. Why is ambition something that is inherently important in society? And I think that the comparative is quite important. In opening government world, the only stepping stone for us to get access to progress is only when there is a threat to our survival, because there is no overarching push for us to be better as individuals or to be better than other individuals. And I want you to liken this to the way in which ants live in a colony. They are very intelligent creatures and they are very intelligent species, but they are unambitious. The only mechanism in which they are able to improve as species, it is when it is biological. It is when over a very long amount of time, biology has taken its course. And this is quite different from us. If you are consistently ambitious, you don't wait for threats to happen before you want to fight against these threats, because you want to be better than other individuals, you are always anticipating ways in your means in which can make you better. And this is quite important. It's because the way in which you've been able to make certain explorations, make certain progress in society, like even exploring space, it's not because it is necessary to our human survival, but it's because people want to be better than other individuals. The reason why we consistently engage in health research, especially when there is competition amidst capitalist structures, to be able to improve upon certain sectors in the economy, to be able to improve upon certain sectors in society like health and etc., is because they want to be better than others. The comparative in their world, it's not that people never have motivation. People would still have motivation, but the only point at which motivation comes is when there is a literal threat to your life and when there is like the literal threat to survival. Why is this something that is important? It's because you wait for a response before you are able to actually make good things for your life. You wait for bad things to happen to you before you respond to these particular things. What ambition says is that because you always want to be better than other individuals, you don't only care about your survival, but you care about more than your survival, and you're most likely going to do these other things. Before I move into my other pieces of argumentation, I'll take closing.
Yeah, because of this instinct of survival, people may have made atomic bomb. They are literally extending climate change. Please engage.
Yeah, so instincts of survival has caused people to be responsive and make specific things. The problem in your world is that that response is only as a result of an immediate threat, which means that people will literally have to die before people react to specific things, because you don't have ambitious people that do not care about things happening in the first place. And I want this to be quite important. The only motivation that they are able to get in their world is not motivation that stems from being better than another individual or achieving something that makes you better. The only source of motivation is literal threats to your survival. That is when human beings would want to pick up their specific tools and etc. to actually want to do better, because it is a mechanism to escape from survival. And this is problematic because you are not able to deal with future problems, but it equally makes it difficult for you to deal with present problems because the harms accrue before you as an individual are able to do all of these things. Let's then talk about capitalist structures and the economics of today's debate. What they say is that people would still want to maintain their profit margins as capitalist societies. The problem with their world is that these profit margins are always a pursuit to be better than other individuals and are always a means of satisfying that particular ambition as an individual. Because you don't necessarily need to be able to maintain those profit margins, because you won't die as a rich person, somebody who is already rich anyways. You won't die as a result of all of those things. But then secondly, a lot of human achievement has been as a result of ambition. Think about the best technology we have in the world. Things as simple as the light bulbs are all other things that were created as a result of ambition, because people tested and failed multiple times. They consistently engage in all of these things multiple times, and they were consistently failing. The only reason why they consistently did all of these things and make all of these advancements in the first place is because of that strong emotion, because of that strong desire to be better individuals. In their world, when there's no ambition, people are not pushed to do all of these things. It means that you have more individuals that do not really care about improvement at the end of the day, and the only reactory mechanism is a world in which you are like most likely going to be under threat and etc. Also, let's talk about other things in today's debate, like social justice movements and etc. Recognize that all of these things do not stem from ambition, but they stem from other arbitrary things, like people just hating other people's cultures and like etc. But equally, people are still rational even when they're ambitious. And this is quite important. It means that if becoming a better person means that you have to cooperate with other individuals, you are still most likely going to cooperate with other individuals because you still want an end goal. That means that you become a better person of yourself or you get a specific achievement. What this then means is that people would still compromise if that compromise in of itself means that they are able to fulfill their ambition at the end of the day. This is quite important because it flips their very own mechanism, because the argument is that people will not want to compromise, and I show you why people will still want to compromise, because it helps them fulfill their ambition as individuals. Thirdly, people will not always be selfish as they say, because there's a distinction between being an ambitious person and being a selfish person. If you're a selfish person that is not able to make yourself better or that's not able to get specific achievements, I don't see why that falls under the bracket of ambition. At the end of the day, recognize that every single thing they say exists in their world. The problem is that there is no mechanism to be able to express these things. People wallow in pity, people wallow in mental depression. We are proud to be opening opposition.
Thank you very much for that fine speech. Member of Government, whenever you're ready.
Can someone confirm I'm audible and visible? The slide is
Yes, you're both.
okay, that's fine. POIs preferably verbally. I'll probably take one at 5 from opening. Give me 1 second. I think a very big problem with the opening half came actually from OG not clearly stating what the comparison is going to look like. So I'm going to start with that because it directly clashes with OO and it also weighs us above OG. Right, so what is the comparison actually going to look like? And I have 4 mechanisms here. First of all, it's going to look like intrinsic motivation. What are the mechanisms behind this? And I want to point out 2 things. First of all, people have intrinsic motivation by virtue of being human beings. If we look at kids, for example, who are extremely curious and passionate without having any incentive to be better than other people because they're too young to learn that toxic mentality, we can see that they do a ton of different things and they innovate so much and they have so much curiosity that translates into like putting it into innovative things, right? And second mechanism, the fact that there's a lot of people in the status quo that actually want to make the world a better place, and they do that despite having these ambitions of being like the most like famous or rich person, right? And we can see people in NGOs or in cooperatives, for example, that are very big, that function on this virtue of like being a passionate person that wants to make the world a better place. These are already mechanisms that are a lot more detailed and present in the status quo, weighs us over OG, right? Second mechanism here, the fact that it's most likely going to look like people wanting to achieve things in moderation. On our side of the house, we're going to advocate for short-term passionate goals, right? That means that people are still going to have an intrinsic motivation to do things. They're not just going to wait until like their lifeline is on the line, as OO is saying that they're only going to do things if they're in survival mode. No, that's completely bullshit. On our side of the house, they're simply going to look for short-term goals that are going to function off of this mechanism of intrinsic motivation that I already mentioned in my POI 200 actually. Third thing that this is going to look like, we can see that it's going to look like a lot more collaboration. They said that on their side of the house, OO said that on their side of the house, they also have collaboration. I want to emphasize the fact that, first of all, that collaboration is used as a means to an end, which is principially wrong, right? People, if their ambitions and they want to be better than everyone else, are going to step over the people or to collaborate simply in order to go to an end goal, right? We can see that people in this transaction are going to be used as means to an end. But also, second thing, on their side, collaboration happens in bubbles, which is going to be very important for my analysis further on. But it means that collaboration is going to be very limited to the people that can actually give you something, and it's not going to come from a place where that collaboration can extend in a way where it actually helps all of society, right? Okay. And the fourth thing I want to emphasize, and I feel like this is very important framing, is the fact like how this achieving significant success actually looks like. Because achieving significant success has no definition. It's extremely vague, and it sets too high of a burden, right? It's people that we look up to that are like billionaires that are achieving like world or changing the world in very significant places. Very crucial because it's something that you can never actually achieve. A lot of OO's impacts are actually contingent on the idea that you're actually going to achieve things. By my framing, we can see that this is never going to happen by proxy of the definition of achieving significant things and the way it actually manifests in reality, right? So now I'm going to move on to my extension. And here I'm going to talk about the larger societal impacts which weigh over OG by virtue of like the amount of people that are going to be effective. And here I have two things. First of all, what is this actually going to look like in terms of how structures in society are going to function? And we feel like ambition is very individualistic in nature, right? It kind of it despises or it's opposite to collaboration. And when I say collaboration, again, collaboration between a larger group than just the one that is going to help you in your immediate goals. And I have three mechanisms or three things I want to talk about. First of all, it's more likely that on our side of the house, universities are going to share a lot more information, right? Right now, universities are sort of fighting each other. Why? Because they want to have like the highest rank possible. They want to trample over everyone else. Why? Because they want to be perceived, they want to be famous, they want to gain more money and things like that. We believe on our side of the house, a lot of these universities that actually do a lot of research, for example, are going to start sharing these things because they're going to lack that like toxic ambition that is only going to make them very individualistic. So on our side of the house, we're actually going to have more information accessible for all sorts of people. And it's very likely that these universities are also going to take like more minorities, for example, exactly because they have a mechanism of like passion and not something that is contingent on those students being like magnificent people, right? Second place where this is very impactful is the fact that we're actually going to have, I believe, a lot less patents in technology, patents in pharmaceuticals. Why? Because the intrinsic, the motivation that happens in the status quo for these very large companies comes from being selfish, comes from this incentive to constantly compare yourself to others and to compete with others, which creates envy and superiority. It comes from wanting to leave a legacy behind, for wanting to be famous. It comes from economic incentives. We believe that on our side of the house, all of these very big companies are not as likely to put patents on things simply because like they don't actually, this profit margin idea, I don't understand where it's coming from, because we're talking about companies that are so big that they don't need that much money anymore, right? It's not about a marginal profit or like keeping their profit margins. It's about them making so much money to the point where it's not even helpful anymore. And they also do like very toxic things in the meantime, in order to achieve those goals. We can see that on our side of the house, it's much more likely that patents on vaccines are not going to happen anymore. And therefore, we're going to have smaller like companies that are going to create vaccines that can potentially help people in third world countries that don't have access to all of these things because they're in that place. Before I move on, sure, opening.
Yeah, so this is the thing. In that particular instance where these small corporations actually exist, the only incentive for them to even compete and do much, much better is when they have the ambition of beating the bigger guys at their own game.
Okay, again, I feel like I've talked about this in my framing. This idea that ambition is the only thing that motivates you in life comes due to the fact that in the status quo, ambition plays such a big role, and like competing with other people plays such a big role. I give you systematic reasons why motivation still exists on our side of the house in the absence of motivation. That's just a wash, POI. Right, so the third thing I want to talk about is this idea of people are going to volunteer more. They're going to work more in NGOs. Right now, there's so many smart people that go into jobs just by virtue of them wanting to be famous or make more money and like achieve this insane amount of significant success, right? But on our side of the house, it's more likely that these people are going to want to collaborate more, to be part of communities and to help other people, and they're going to volunteer more, work in NGO, stuff like that. This directly helps the most vulnerable people, right? The people that need the assistance of people of volunteering of like international NGOs. On our side of the house, we have an impact that like directly impacts the most vulnerable communities just by virtue of having this, which directly weighs us above OG. And the last thing I want to talk about is what the comparative is on their side of the house, because I feel like a lot of bad things in society happen because of ambition, right? A lot of people wanted to build oil empires, and that's why we have a very big problem with climate change. A lot of people want to win wars, right? If we look at Putin, the reason that he's so horrible in his actions is because he's insanely ambitious and he wants to be the best and he wants to dominate the world. We can see this happen over and over again in history. We believe that on our side of the house, this disincentive is actually going to lead to less ambition and again to like less wars happening and things like that.
Thank you very much for the very fine speech. I want to call a member of opposition to continue the case in opposition. Here.
Thank you. Do you mind confirming if I'm audible?
Yes, you're audible and visible.
Awesome, thank you. I'll just place my timer. I'll begin in a few seconds. Okay. I'll begin in 5 seconds. Both benches inside government do the same mistake that makes this debate very little clear. That is to assume that ambition only affects people who are horrible and who do horrible things with their money and with their power and with their influence. They say about the oil companies and the gun control and all of the people who might have an impact on their ambition, only amplifying what is done by bad, but not considering what can be done for good for the people who need the ambition to break the cycle. What we as closing opposition say that is unique to our bench is that ambition is merely a catalyst to what people bring in their interior, and that is the big motivation that all of the other sides of the house are trying to find that makes people take this action and makes this impact. And this is particularly relevant in the context that only us and not opening opposition will bring you, that is to social movements and how they perform change in society. Because look, social movements, by definition, have a non-obvious point of view about society. They defend a cause that is not necessarily widely accepted, and they need to gain traction. They need this big composition of people who believe in this cause and who are willing to fight for it. But it is likely to be contested by those in control, and I mean that in 4 different ways. Number one, laws are made to be held in a stable equilibrium. They already exist, and they tend to be written and controlled and manipulated so that they aren't really contested, and they're like as little as polemic as they can be, so that they actually perform their function of being defendable and being protected and really controlling society. Number 2, they're passed by oligarch politicians who have the incentives of being part of old families coming from politics and who have to this big incentive to propagate all of these benefits that are coming from them and to just make this as stable as possible into their own protection. Thirdly, they are also protected by white men in funny suits in the judiciary who have the willingness to have this stability metric as the most important, and once again are most likely to be against this big revolutions and this big context in society. And number 4, they sustain these old privileges of people who still benefit from those privileges today. Because the people who tend to be likely favored by these conservative policies are the ones from the companies, industries, financial centers. They are the ones controlling like the big narratives and the big stakes in society. And this shows us that social movements are very unlikely to have the success unless they can have like the necessary force to break all of this chain of constricting factors over them. Then why ambition specifically is the mechanism to break this? I'll give you 3 reasons. Reason number 1, because intrinsic motivation, as government tries to pass, is not as widespread or commoditized as ambition. People might have intrinsic motivation at different times of their lives and towards different topics or certain areas of their lives. So they can be very motivated about a new job or finding a position in a different company or about the new lover that they have, but very hardly it will be as constant or as motivating as engaging as ambition, which is a topic that is just more principled, more abstract, and more guiding in their decisions. Number 2, vision of the whole and legacy. And this is a direct confront against closing government. We believe that all of these attributions of credit and of merit that come with ambition and with people trying to propagate their presence might be good as long as they're used for the transformation made in society, because it actually pushes people to doing it, to actually going and doing it. And even if it's like an egoistic kind of incentive for people to perform a certain action, if they are like pragmatically doing it, it's still good. Number 3, social movements depend on general support because they need to be growing and growing and gaining traction. And they're more likely to achieve this growing and growing mentality if they're based in ambition. And if they see as a reasonable and willing reason to be better and to be constantly going for that bigger thing. And before I talk about implications, I'll take a POI from opening if they have any.
You're right. Social movements need majority buy-in, who are oftentimes disenchantized by the minorities. But a more ambitious movement demands way too much and demands it more aggressively, which turns majorities away, undermining political capital and buy-in.
No, what we believe is that there's a weighing to be made here between the benefits of this ambition actually moving people and the social constraints. I believe this is well addressed in the debate. And so two main implications to this case. Reason number one, we have more efficient social movements in society, so they're more likely to succeed in finding more people who are like supportive of their cause, and so they have a better chance of changing all of these oligarchic structures and all of this perpetuated privileges from certain groups. And this brings us to a second big implication in the debate, that the delta in happiness that has been claimed since opening government is actually greater in our side of the house, because our impact is that minorities and vulnerable groups are better recognized and have a better chance of having like their condition of existence being protected by society. And so this marginal happiness of you not having to compete with your neighbor because like he's got a better car than you is just irrelevant. We believe that the true competition is the competition that perpetuates a social difference between people. And so when we eliminate this by having this greater incentive for people to fight against this system and to actually have social justice as a metric of happiness, people have a better chance of belonging to society and to feeling good about belonging to society. And a side effect of our case that you might be wondering is that as we have higher highs and lower lows, our higher highs are actually the big standouts that bring us like this marginal difference. So we are more likely to have like geniuses and breakthroughs happening because people are ambitious and they're fighting for it and they have like this greater incentive to go for it than if we just abdicate from that. And that's true about Martin Luther King being so passionate about his fight and willing to take it to another level at social justice, but it is just similarly about true for like Albert Einstein or any other exponent in society as they try to gain like the recognition or just the work done because they feel like they can be a different motor in society and because they can promote change, social or scientific or financial or whatever. And so we have like this delta that is truly unique in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very fine speech. I'll call on Whip speak from the government to close off government pensions debate. Thank you.
Hello, am I audible? Yeah, give me 10 seconds. I'm just gonna have water. Ooh. Before I start my speech, I just wanna appreciate my teammate Ania. I'd not be here without you. This is our second consecutive final. Let's do more finals together. Yeah. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Starting with closing them. They said that social movements are important, but think about it. The reason you go to social movements or support any social movement like Black Lives Matter and go into protesting, even when you are in autocratic state, even if you are, which we were in Bangladesh and we went to the street, the reason is not always selfish. There are sometimes it just becomes from within the principle justification that it is wrong. That's the reason why people go to protest, even with it has the bigger chance of killing you as a whole person, but even when it probably doesn't affect you as much as it affects other communities. So there are other reasons that you go to social movements, right? But secondarily, The reason people need to go to social movement is because where the inequality exists, people have innate competition or to try to go over others. In our world, as it's a preferred motion, we don't have such kind of tendency to begin with. Secondarily, they said that they have the incentive to break down oligarchs. So you want to fight fire with fire, right? On our side, passion is a way bigger incentive or like intrinsic feeling to break those. And secondarily, we also didn't have oligarchs or big guys to begin with. Okay, let's deal with OO then, right? They said that there's going to be improving own communities because you have a kind of like a competition between communities, right? Hey, the reason you need to improve your community and vulnerable is because one, maybe you have been historically wronged by colonialism, or maybe because the other communities aren't sharing their resources with you. For example, tribes in Africa constantly fighting for their resources. In our world, it happens significantly less, and how it gets better, I'll tell you in my constructive, right? And they say that there's a better government policy. Note that OG did not even touch with that point, right? We will touch that. One, it exists in our world as well, and even better. How so? In current world, you don't get a lot of legislative change because you cannot get half of them to agree with you. It happens because of A, ideological conflict, but B, conflict of interest. But in our side of the world, you don't necessarily see others as your competition or success as a zero-sum game. This then means we have better chance of getting things done even on legislative level, right? And thirdly, they said that people give up. People will give up when there's no intrinsic motivation factor. The reason people give up in their world because there's a fucking pressure in them to do better than other people, right? This doesn't exist in our world as well. Fourthly, communities. They said that there's a big communities like build up in their side of the world in OO, right? Notice, OG size community build up doesn't happen that OO side of the world, but they never tell you how it actually gets built up, right? We tell you it happens in our world in few ways. One, because you have no interest of getting all the resources of any particular region. This means you rather become collaborative and not jealous about other achievement because you don't think it's a zero-sum success game. Secondarily, you rather collaborative because you really care about physics or philosophy or feminism, right? This then means you start to collaborate with people who share the same fucking interest in your world, which means you probably want to in real world, you probably want to collaborate with debaters who like debating rather than you see them as competitions, right? Cool. Another thing that came from OO, that's survival of species, right? The survival of species is even less in their world because people died some of the horrible shits in the world. For example, causing climate change, which is literally at odds with your own survival, which have a very greater chance of getting solved in our world, right? And companies need money. I think Ania already dealt with that, right? Okay, then let's talk about OG then, right? What did OG tell you? It is very important that OG, I'll take at around 5. Don't badger. Do flash out. People have competitively not just because people are competitive not just because of ambition, right? There are other existing narrative in the society. Insofar it is a capitalistic world and all these other narratives exist, people will still grin on personal level, right? So OG's personal level argument and huge impact based on them is not as much comparative as ours are. Secondarily, they did not do enough work in illustrating the world without ambition and how it looks like. Ania did a very wonderful job on doing so. Thirdly, OG's impact is on just individual level. Note that our impact happens on broader scale as well, which we will talk about later in our speech, right? Fourthly, they said that the rich will be less greedy, right? And would not do like advocate for stuff like abortion or anti-immigration. I just don't show how is it important, but secondly, how is it comparative, right? Okay, so what do we tell you that? We tell you that vulnerable communities and patent university, how it happens, right? In their side of the world, everyone has the ambition to be best in the world because that even if collaborative happens, it happened in a certain bubble, right? Opposition tried to tell you that, yeah, there's some degree of collaboration, but think about it. For example, Oxbridge and Ivy University, when they have a paywall to access all their journals, which is often in USD, the problem is a lot of the countries have a weaker currency for structural reasons, which are out of their control. Now, in our world, you have all these universities to collaborate for 2 reasons. One, university ranking. This ranking will necessarily not matter. But secondarily, good students and academies. A lot of the good student universities, good student academies just want to go for Ivy Leagues and like other universities, right? In our world, they try to go for every other stuff like that, right? POI from opening. 3, 2,
Yeah, panel
One.
notice that closing government argument is that there are several other factors that could motivate people to improve themselves. Panel, each and every one of these factors are premised upon self-improvement and taking upon like huge things upon your shoulders. It is the same as ambition.
We are saying that there are intrinsic motivation to do all of those things, and he already gave you how it manifests, right? So what are the impacts that we show you? One, innovation that helps us solve all the problems in some of the problems in our world, which are literally at odds with our survival, which always try to push you, right? Such as climate change. Impact. We also take most vulnerable communities in such of places, right? When Ania talked about medication and patent in medication, right? Like TB, a lot of the big companies don't moving their vaccine patent because it serves them to make more money, even when they have enough money. In our world, you are not making money. You are doing things as a company because you actually love it. In it, you feel intrinsic interest in doing so. Why do we win this debate then? We do a lot of more innovation because of lot of collaboration that it helps the most vulnerable communities in places like Africa because they are the most vulnerable in terms of climate change. Secondarily, we all way over OG because they were just talked about personal level satisfaction. We talked about more than that in this debate. Thirdly, we showed how community building is better in our world. This push already came from O first speaker, but if you carefully listen, DPN just says community building doesn't happen in O's world. But this rebuttal is not enough unless you show that this happened in our world. We did that. Very, very proud to win this debate.
Thanks very much for a very fair speech. I want to call on Op Group to close off this debate in general. Here.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. I'm gonna be starting in a couple of seconds. Please make your POIs only through the chat, okay? Don't make POIs through voice. That interrupts my reasoning. Only through chat. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, the main problem with government as a whole is that they are basically avoiding their burden. They conveniently tell you what will be all the good things if the bad people that have ambition would let ambition, while without the good things if toxicity from ambition would cease to exist. But they forget that ambition is a two-sided sword, which means that on their side of the house, the good people like social movements also need that ambition. They're using that ambition to strive for change. And also on their side of the house, the ambition that is needed in the first place to achieve those good impacts is also gone. They fail to show to you a comparative on that. They keep avoiding the burden despite numerous POIs. Our extension is the only one that showed the actual tipping point. We showed you that ambition is something that is more relevant for social movements and those that are actually fighting for change and fighting against the status quo than it is relevant for those that are already sitting in structures of power and that are already don't need much effort or ambition to maintain what they already have. I'm going to make it even more clear through direct rebuttal. First of all, closing government. Notice on the argument of collaboration here. They say basically on two main lines. First of all, how does this make collaboration better because universities are less toxic and are more likely to share information. What they forget is that on their side of the house, scientists also have less of an incentive to be trying to go for big discoveries, or having the ambition to be the one that is recognized as one who revolutionized the field of social science, to the field of medicine, or the field of technology, whatever that is. Which means that it doesnn't matter if universities are going to start sharing info, if they're going to aim more projects on the first hand. Second of all, no sense like patents. Here is what the case becomes even more broken, right? Because they fail to prove to you why ambition is a tipping point. They say, oh, patents aren't going to exist anymore because corporations don't have the ambitions to actually go for things. They forgot that greed still exists on their side and that we are doing this now. I think that is actually that we read wrong. This is not the preferred word motion. It's not been always like this. We are pushing the button now, which means that all the legal things that make proper intellectual property, etc., are likely to just keep keep on going. And second of all, companies don't do that because of ambition. They do that because it's literally unviable for you to do big research. We spend a lot of money and we spend like years of time for you to actually be able to end that result, end that research. If you don't have the guarantee that you will be only one be able to be profiting from that product as soon as you release it. So they again fail to show you why there is contingent on ambition. Moving on to what they say about collaboration. They say, oh, more people volunteer to work. Two responses. First of all, they fail to prove to you again why is that ambition that's going to make people go to work. The thing that is presumed here is like, oh, I have more free time because I'm not going for things, therefore I'm going to do volunteer. No analysis on that big logical gap. But second of all, even if it's true that more people go for volunteer work on the side, we think they are more likely to go for things that are less ambitious, smaller goals, which means that instead of like fighting for a public policy that is going to give houses to homeless people, or is that going to be a public support, they are content with just like going to give soup to them on a Sunday. And that's the kind of volunteer that they do. It's way lesser on intensity and on impact specifically. Notice that the only response for us, a social movement, is that they're still going to do it because inequality exists. That fails to compare with what our extension has given you. Notice that what we say is that there are a lot of structural difficulties and challenges that have to be overcome for you to be able to actually provoke change. Imagine what it's like to be able to get a majority in a parliament that is can only be acquired by massive and continuous change in votes from a lot of the population over time. For you to be able to promote big strikes that are all big goals, and for leaders in general to even be able to conceive that they have such a big and greater ambition that they want to change this world as it is, that they are willing to risk their lives and not to go pursue anything because they want to be that legacy. They want to be known as the one who was the one who conquered right for its people, that was able to challenge that system. Notice that those kind of wins are only possible when you have ambition. In the comparison, and they will also clash with OG, the NOCG in some sense, because they say, oh, billionaires don't have much of extent to exploit. Bezos doesn't need an incentive to exploit. It's not like he's like whipping people, say, work harder for me to get profits. It's like when we push this button that all the things in Amazon still happen because Bezos still wants to get profit, and he doesn't need ambition to continue exploration because that is the status quo. On the flip coin, though, if anyone wants to make an union or specifically and try to fight off Jeff Bezos, or if anyone wants to change something in law, they need the ambition to be able to go there and to dedicate a significant part of their lives to actually fight those big corporations that seems as unwinnable. That's why ambition is a better tipping point. It's more relevant to these social movements that provoke good change than it is for those people that only need to sit on these structures that are already maintained or made to maintain and sustain the status quo. Before I go, POI from OG, please.
Yeah, Bezos has an incentive to have money, but the reason he's pushing for even more wealth is because he is ambitious. He has no reason to get an extra $1 billion beyond the fact that it gives him moral value.
I think he has a lot of reasons, actually. Like, I think the reason... first of all, there's a gross mischaracterization. Bezos doesn't actually care for greed. He launched a fucking rocket into space. I don't think he did that for money. I think he did that for fame. And I think he still feels good from having more money. I think he still feels good from having more fame. The comparison here is, does Bezos need to go to big effort to attain more things? We think he doesn't, because he's already a successful man for what he does. However, we think on the flip side, anyone that wants to fight Jeff Bezos and try to de-establishment from the field of power needs big motivation, needs big ambition to be able to get all of the support and fight against it. The only response panel that we get from OG on this is, oh, when social movements demand too much, they actually scare people. Two responses to this. First of all, this is basically untrue. They give no reason why that happens, no characterization. They're basically saying, oh, we prefer if Martin Luther King actually wasn't fighting for all the rights of Black people, if it just like will continue to smaller chains. That's what they're saying based on their scenario. But second of all, the reason why that doesn't work is the reason why social movements go to so outstanding claims is that they want to have some bargaining chip. I'm reaching for the skies, I aim for the moon, and I'm landing on a mountain. When I go for a big thing, I establish that as the anchor, which means that when I know that the people on the other side are going to try to make my proposal smaller or actually dehydrated specifically, I reach and be able to get the original goal that I intended for. I propose a higher goal than I wanted to, knowing that will be reduced by the opposition, and then I get what I actually wanted. That is why social movements get so much, do so much big goals. What we get in here on our side of the house, we know that the papers that social movement actually get those impacts. This means that the quality of life of those minorities actually are better. In comparison specifically with OG, notice that these impacts are non-reversible, which means that it's way more, which means that we gain more from winning, or it is more permanent on our wins, than we lose from our losses. It's better to overcome and reverse a failure than it is to reverse one of those things. It's also more intense because this is what allows those people to live free of discrimination and have a better life in general. We think we win this round, very proud to oppose.
Thank you, everyone, for which was a very enjoyable debate. I'd ask everyone who's not a judge to please leave the room. I'd ask, I think it was Alex who started the recording, to preferably stop it. And I'll announce the results at the closing ceremony.
Thanks. Good debate, guys.
Alex, can you stop the recording?